So let's talk about how do you pick the right school. And Marianne, how old is your child? You're muted.
Sorry, Kelly, I just walked out while you
Oh,
were.
sorry. How old is your child?
She is 15,
She a sophomore or junior?
sophomore,
Sophomore?
taking dual enrollment courses.
Oh, good for her. Good for her. That's awesome. Okay. So Andrew's a junior, your daughter's a sophomore. So let's talk about picking the right school. Somebody's sister went there and they loved it. It's really good for XYZ program. And a lot of that really good is very subjective. It's very much up to each person on what's really good for them. There's no one school that's the best. A lot of people want to believe that, oh, well, an Ivy's better than anywhere else. And that's not the case. The school has to be the right fit for the student. And I'm going to share several examples over the last 10 years of working with students to give you guys an idea of how you want to maybe reframe your thinking on it. So I had a student who wanted to study biology with the intention of being pre-med. And some schools have an actual pre-med program, which is basically a biology major. And so they went and looked at schools. Well, one of the things that I require our clients do is to meet with the head of the department in which the student plans to study. Because as much as you think like, well, biology is biology, it's not. And it's like that for every single major. And Andrew, we're going to discuss like CompSci in a hot second here. So anyways, this particular student, he went to a school. His mom said, as they're doing the tour, the kid is in love with the school. Like, oh my gosh, mom, did you see this? Oh my gosh, isn't this great? Mom, did you see that? And just really, really excited about every aspect that the school had to offer. So they get done with their tour. He's like gung ho, this is the place for me. And they meet with the head of the science department, of the biology department. And he was an interesting gentleman, I guess, very eclectic. And he took them into his office, and the entire office was filled with plastic boxes that held dead bugs because he was an entomologist. And as he discussed his biology program, the focus was really on entomology, ecology, the environment. Sure, there was biology 101 and biology 102, and there was chemistry 101 and chemistry 102, but all of the additional classes were really focused more on ecological sciences. And as the head of the department, he didn't have a focus on a pre-med. He knew no one at any med schools. They offered no MCAT prep. They did not have a cadaver lab. These are all things that are critical to a student's development to be ready to apply and be competitive to a medical school. And so the poor student was deflated because he thought like, this is the place. But it taught him a great lesson that, that meeting with the head of the department is so important. He eventually went on, found a head of a department that he absolutely clicked with, really enjoyed, and he ended up attending school there and went on to med school, and it was the perfect fit for him. My own daughter is a veterinarian, and she knew, we are here in Ohio, and she knew she wanted to go to Ohio State Vet School. At the time she was applying, or at the time she was planning this, there were only 16 vet schools in the entire country. Incredibly competitive. Ohio State being one of them, so she thought like that would be a great fit for her for vet school. And so a lot of people say, oh, so she went to Ohio State for undergrad, right? No, absolutely not. Because Ohio State has a million kids that want to go on to vet school. Ohio State, their Bio 101 and 102 classes and Chem 101 and 102 are typically filled with 200 to 300 kids. She's like, and taught by teaching assistants. She's like, I'm never going to get to meet professors in that environment. I'm never really going to be able to forge relationships. I'm never going to be able to stand out the way I need to stand out to make sure I get into vet school. So she went to a small, basically no-name liberal arts college. but she played Division II soccer. She was ESPN All-American, all academic first team in the country. She rode on their equestrian team. She was vice president of their student activities committee. She got her 500 vet hours in. She babysat for both the head of the science department and the head of the math department, who both eagerly agreed to write her letters of recommendation. Ohio State, when they do their vet school selections, they take all the candidates and they narrow it down to 400 candidates. And then they do 8 interview days, 50 kids a day. The night before the interview, they invite you to a cocktail party and you can bring one guest. So my daughter took her then boyfriend, who's now her fiance. They've been together since 10th grade. It's been like 14 years. And so she called me after the interview and she says, oh my gosh, I'm not getting in here. There's a girl from Cornell. This is her 3rd time applying. This is her 2nd interview. There's a student here from Yale. It is their 5th time applying and they have had previous interviews. She said, there's no way I'm getting in if kids from Cornell and Yale are not getting in. My daughter got in. The kids from Cornell and Yale were not in her class. That doesn't mean that they weren't offered a spot, but they did not take the spot if they were offered, or they may not have been offered. Because going to the right school for you, where you're able to do a lot of extra things, plus get stellar grades, is often more important if you're planning an additional degree afterwards. Sometimes it's important if you're planning to go into the workforce. The workforce today wants to know that you're well-rounded, that you can do more than just study and get decent grades, that you can communicate with other people. So did you belong to clubs? Did you lead? Are you going to be able to come into the workplace and talk to old people like me? So they really want to know that you are well-rounded. So your school selection shouldn't just be focused on quote unquote the best based on some arbitrary things that get rated or what someone else told you. It should be really on what's best for you, what's best for your child. Where are they going to thrive? Where is it going to be a great, great experience? And Diane, welcome. Sorry, you're kind of coming in the middle of this conversation. We're talking about how important the best fit is, and how that doesn't mean it's necessarily ranked the best according to some random report, because there's a lot that go into those reports that have nothing to do with your child's outcome. But what's going to be the best fit for your child? So keep in mind that when you're visiting schools, definitely meet with the head of the department. Andrew, I mentioned to you, you mentioned CompSci. I have 2 students right now, both looking at CompSci, and one is adamant, absolutely 1000% adamant, cannot have foreign language as a requirement. The other one wants to minor in a foreign language. Well, there are schools where CompSci requires a foreign language and others that don't. And so those 2 students are looking at very different schools. They're both looking at very good schools, but they're looking at different schools based on their needs and their wants. So you really kind of have to figure out what that need and want is first. The sooner you start, the better. So Marianne, you're in a great place with your daughter. Diane, how old is your child?
Kelly, Andrew is my child, so I'm.
Oh, okay. Fabulous.
Yeah, so we're partnering here. Yep. So he's 17 and a junior.
Yes, Andrew and I already spoke. I already showed Andrew stuff before Marianne got on the call, and I'm actually going to circle back and show you guys something else that I think is really kind of cool and important.
Thank you.
So yeah, Andrew shared with me some of his top schools and things like that. But again, Andrew, super important that you go and meet with the heads of those departments and talk to them about, what you're looking to get out of it. CompSci is a really broad field. Are you interested in artificial intelligence? Are you interested in computer hardware? It's very broad. So you narrowing down what you're most interested in is super important. Marianne, does your daughter know what she'd like to do?
Yes, she'd like, obviously, pre-med, OBGYN.
Okay, super. So you're looking for, and again, pre-med can really go a lot of different directions. Most kids go biology or an actual pre-med program. Some go chemistry. But I've seen students, psych, neuroscience, like there's a lot of different options to go pre-med and still be pretty proficient. The most important thing is that she makes sure that she's taking some electives in the classes or in the topics that are going to be covered on the MCAT. So a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, they added psych to the MCAT, which they had not had previously. So making sure she's got some psych background. They have a physics area in the MCAT. Obviously, biology, biochemistry, physiology, all of that are in there as well. Ethics, things like that. So that will be important, that she's making sure she's hitting on all of the topics she's going to be tested on in the MCAT will be important. I feel like too often students look at just like the social aspect. Oh, the campus is pretty, it looks nice, there's football games on Saturdays, I'm good to go. And I think you really need to go deeper than that. We always focus on 3 areas for students. Number 1 is the academic area. I use the analogy that a college is like your flight to vacation. College isn't the end goal. It's just to get you to a career. Just like getting on the flight isn't your end goal. It's the vacation that's the end goal, right? And so there's not one flight that's right for everyone. And you have to look at the other factors to determine, which college is going to be best. So obviously academically, is it going to get you to where you want to be? And as we were just talking, making sure that it has the right components in that academic program. That, Marianne, your daughter does not end up in a biology program that's focused on entomology if she's planning on being a doctor. That would be tragic. And I can tell you, looking at the college's website, there was no indication of that whatsoever. It wasn't until he met with the head of the department. So it's super important to meet with department heads and really understand where their focus is, asking questions. How many students do matriculate to med school? What's the average score of MCAT for your students? Asking those questions up front, not waiting until once you've been admitted and trying to figure it out. Andrew, for you, if you're thinking something in computer science, do you have an end goal? Is it to work in a certain type of company? Do you know companies in a particular area, outside of like Google or whatever, unless that, again, is your dream? But are there companies in your area that you're like, oh, I'd love to go work for this company or this company? How many of your students have been placed in these jobs? What type of internships do you offer? For you, Andrew, internships and co-op are much more important. Marianne, for your daughter, it's more how many hours in a hospital, whether it's volunteering, shadowing, doing something in a hospital. So each program's a little bit different on what you need to get out of it to set yourself up for success. And that's, looking at that end line is really important. So Diane and Marianne, this question's more for you guys than for Andrew, because he may or may not know. Do you have a financial goal? Like, we want to stake around this dollar amount. We want to be here. Or are you like, open checkbook? If my kid wants to go to an $80,000 a year school and it's the best school, we're good. Because I do have parents like that too. So it just depends on where you want to be. So there's a couple tools, just so you know, that you can take a look at. I'm going to share my screen. Hang on one second here. Okay, so Andrew mentioned Virginia Tech. And so when we look at Virginia Tech, what we're looking at is they have a decent acceptance rate, which is great. But their average GPA is a 396. The middle 50%, I'm going to use ACT numbers, and that way I don't have to add on the spot, but I'm going to use ACT numbers. The middle 50% score 31. So if you're looking to get merit money, you need to be in that top 25%, maybe even top 10%. So now you're looking at, I've got to be at least a 32 to even think I'm getting money. And I have to be above a 396 to get money. And that's how you want to approach this. If you look at a school, for instance, like, let's say, well, let's just go with Harvard because that's nice and easy. If we go to Harvard, GPA is a 4. That's an unweighted. Look at their middle 50% ACT, 33 to 35. You're not getting a dime here. And 25% of their kids have a perfect 36. Unless you have need, you're not getting money at Harvard. So a wide range of schools. I can show you, I'll show you another school that is incredibly generous, and it doesn't make it a bad school. I've actually had some of my tutors have attended the engineering program at this particular university. It's close to me, obviously, because they were engineering students and did this. Average GPA of 3.5, average ACT of 23. I've had kids go to school here almost for free in engineering and come out and get top of the line jobs. So don't let a school's overall statistics fool you into thinking it's a bad school, there's not going to be a great outcome. My most recent tutor who went here, he got the job that he actually got an internship in California. He got the job he wanted and was rewarded with a 6-figure salary to start. So don't let the stats of a school necessarily fool you into thinking it's not a great school. Marianne, I don't know how much of the conversation you heard about my daughter's vet process, going to vet school, but med school and vet school, very similar in the competitiveness and so forth. And she did not pick a super high rated undergrad school, which, and to be honest, her academically, she was awarded 90% of the tuition. And then with soccer, she got the other 10%. So we never paid tuition there. We only paid room and board. And she got right into vet school because she was able to, I jokingly say, juggle 7,000 flaming swords at the same time. And that's what they want to see in vet school or med school. They want to know you can handle the pressure, that you can do everything all at once. So Andrew, I promised you something at the beginning because my students love me. The girl I texted sent back her information for Naviance. So I'm going to try to get in there right now so I can, and so I know Andrew's school uses Naviance. Marianne, are you familiar with Naviance at your school?
I want to say my son had it. I'm not sure. My daughter's in a public charter.
Okay.
I can't remember. They do have something, but I don't remember. I'll have to look.
Okay. So if they have Naviance, I'm going to show you, let me find, she just texted me her login information. Let me find it here. I love my fabulous students who are like, oh, sure, here, let me just let you log into my stuff. Oh, I'm logging in. I'm not typing a darn thing. And let's see. All right, let's hope that this works. So, why is this? Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. Andrew, you have to get your Naviance login reset at school. Marianne, you need to see if your daughter has it. There's, it's called Scattergrams on here. Not every school employs them. Sometimes they take them down during application season, which that's a big waste for everyone then when they're not working. But if the Scattergrams are working, it is a fabulous tool. All right, I lied. We're not getting in there. I apologize. I don't know why it's not working, and maybe I'm typing something in wrong. But so Scattergrams, what they'll do is it'll be a graph. And on the y-axis is typically test scores. And you can do it based on ACT or SAT. and the x-axis is GPA. And so you can go in and look to see where there are green checks. What were those kids' GPA and test scores, and how does your child compare to them? Typically on Naviance, your child will be a just a little blue circle. There will be little dark blue or purple circles where people were waitlisted and then never gave an answer, never told the school what ended up happening. And then there will be red X's where those students did not get in. And so it's super interesting if you look at those scattergrams, because it gives you a great idea from your school, who are they accepting? Are the kids similar to you? Is it more of a reach for you based on your GPA or your test scores? So if you have the opportunity to take a look at Naviance and see where students from your school, how they're matriculating into your top choices, it's very, very helpful. I think kids are often surprised when we do this and they see that there's no one that's ever been accepted, let's say, at a Notre Dame or a Northwestern or you know, a Boston College, and they're like, oh my gosh, no one from my school's ever gotten there. So, and to see red X's with higher GPAs than they have, it gives you a better perspective on what's going to be a reach. If you're right in the area where green check marks start, still may be a reach, especially based on this year, applications are out of control. I don't know how they're going to be next year, but this year applications are out of control. Ohio State University usually gets about 50,000 apps. They're going to end up at about 68,000 this year. I had a student whose father insisted, against my advice, that she apply to 40 schools, including every single Ivy. In the past, what I saw were students applying to maybe 1 or 2 reach schools, a chunk of probable schools that were a good fit, and then a safety school, just in case. And so it's shocking to me that I'm seeing kids this year, and everyone's reporting this across the board. I think UCLA, 170,000 applications this year. I mean, just ridiculousness. And so how do you set yourself apart in that kind of, you know, world? So having a good mix of schools and knowing where you're likely to get accepted, where you're likely to get money, I think those are really important things. But meeting with heads of departments, really understanding their program, the offerings in their program, the extras, internships, co-ops, research opportunities. Marianne, for your daughter, that could be really important to be able to get research with a professor. Often, the bigger the school, the less opportunities for research, because they're often giving that to graduate students, they're giving it to TAs, they're giving it to just upperclassmen. You know, getting research as a senior doesn't help. Your applications will have already been submitted to med school unless you're taking a gap year. So a school where professors are actually teaching every class, they're not being taught by a TA, and there's research opportunities, you know, that's definitely something your daughter wants to ask about to make sure it is really a good fit for her. So now, because there's only a few of us on here, like, let's open it up for questions for about the next 10 minutes or so. What questions does everyone have? I think you're muted, Diane.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I have a question. So you mentioned enrollments, let's say in these universities. So what is the driving factor? Why is there such an increase?
I think 2 things. I think even though most of my students have test scores, I still see them being encouraged, like, oh, well, there's going to be a lot of kids without test scores, so we're going to submit to more schools. We're going to stand a better chance because there's such a mix of, you know, with and without test scores. Kids without test scores assume if they have a 4.0, it puts them in the running. And, you know, you really have to stand out. And if you don't have a test score, even if they're saying they're test optional, other than the UC schools where they won't accept it at all, even if they're saying they're test optional, okay, well then what do you have that really makes you stand out? Because your GPA is one thing, but like without a test score, is your GPA legit? And I say that because there's so much grade inflation that goes on among high schools, and it doesn't happen at every high school, but it happens at a lot of high schools. And so how does every college know if, you know, your GPA is legitimate, or if there was a lot of grade inflation? You know, there's a school not too far from here where we work with a lot of their students. They're great students. It's an academically rigorous program, but 2 years ago, 34% of their class graduated with a 4.0. Okay, well, that's crap, because 34% of your kids should not graduate with seemingly straight A's, but they offer so many AP options and college credit plus options that bump that GPA up. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult for a college admission representative to figure that out, to like know where they're at. So if they have that added proof, like, oh, you've got great scores, it helps.
Do they look across the board? In other words, GPA, maybe, you know, activities, maybe application, you know, essays, things, letters from,
Yes,
you know, do they
they
look at
do.
that combined? Okay.
They do. But I just had a conversation with a fairly selective schools admission director on last Friday, not yesterday, but last Friday. And a couple things. And one thing he told me, which I did never even cross my mind, that I think is important for families to know. If you're going test optional, but your high school puts your test score on your transcript, which some high schools do, they put those scores right on the transcript. The admission director said, look, we can't unsee that. If your test score is garbage and you're like, oh, I'm going test optional, nobody will know. Everyone knows because it's right on your transcript and we can't unsee it. So that's something. The number one factor for a college to determine how a student is going to do, despite the fact that there is so much grade inflation, they still prioritize grades. That is still the number one factor. And here's how they look at it. And I don't think high school students take this into account. So they're only seeing your grades for 3 years because you're applying, you should be applying in August or September of your senior year. You want to be on the early end. It shows that you knew what you were doing, you were motivated, you prioritized it. You should get your application in early. At the beginning of the process, they are, you know, like, oh gosh, we've got to fill our class. We've got to fill our class. If you're close, you're more likely to get in than if you come in close to the deadline, even if it's the early action deadline, but you come in with 10,000 other people. Now we've got to go through 10,000 applications. What's the easiest way to sort? Grades and test scores. Easiest way, because I got to get through them. So coming in early is super, super, super important. They look at grades because when kids are in high school, mom and dad are cooking their dinners, mom and dad are helping them out, mom and dad are running for poster board, notebooks, whatever, mom and dad are doing their laundry. Kids' job is to get good grades and do their activities. And when they're not getting good grades or they're really low on activities, they wonder, how will they do when now they are also responsible for their laundry, for feeding themselves, for getting their supplies, their books, and everything else. And they don't have mom and dad over their shoulder saying, did you get that homework done? Why is there a 0 on Power School or Progress Book for this class? What are you doing about this? They don't have anybody there doing that. So colleges, when they admit a student, they are going to get, they only bill for 1 semester at a time. They're just going to get first semester money. If a kid blows up, doesn't do well, maybe they just get C's and D's, they get put on academic probation, they're allowed to come back to the school, and mom and dad are like, we are not paying 40 grand a year for you to go and get C's and D's. You're home, you're going to do community college. No one is coming to take that kid's spot second semester. The school has lost out on that 20 grand, 10 grand, whatever a semester's worth. They're losing out on that money. It is not uncommon for a school to lose 180 kids from day one of first semester to day one of second semester. It could be kids leaving right away, like 2 weeks in. Oh, I'm not happy. I can't do this. It could be kids who didn't do well with grades. So as a business, they're looking at it like, I got to make sure I'm going to get paid second semester. And the number one indication is, what kind of grades did they get in high school? Because that's the best I can expect in college, typically.
So, and I won't talk anymore because I know there's other.
No, please, because there's only.
My last question's important. So my son's a junior. How can he possibly, we're now putting courses together for next year. Is there any way that we could focus on maybe getting the, GPA up a little bit? I've even looked at college courses for him to take next year because the high school doesn't offer a lot of, let's say, AP courses in his field, but he has a combination of CP courses too. So we're trying to get that, GPA up a little. What could we do?
Sure. So, the same admission person told me last Friday, if you have not taken any AP or CCP classes and think that you load up your schedule as a senior and it's going to benefit you, it doesn't, because we still don't know how you're going to do in them. But what I would tell you to do is don't just schedule underwater basket weaving and bowling and think that, I'll get A's and it'll look really good. Have a mix, but make sure where Andrew's stretching himself, that he knows he can get A's in that stretch, in that higher level class. And depending on the school, like I have a student, I have a family, they have triplets. One child will never go off to college. He's got some disabilities. One child came to, both of their children, the other two came for ACT test prep. One scored a 36. We're super proud of him. He's been accepted at Notre Dame. The other student really prioritized sports during high school and didn't do as well academically. And his high school guidance counselor said, don't apply until after your grades come out for first semester, so that we can show them your first semester. And I'm like, absolutely not. I need you in these colleges early. They're going to already fill their class. You're going to be like an after. They're going to be like, why do we need you? You didn't decide to work till first semester of high school, of senior year of high school. So what we did is we made sure that he had decent classes, but that we knew he could get A's in his classes and maybe 1B. But we put in his application, there's a section for where you can add additional information. And so we added additional information, and the additional information can never be excuse making. It can't be blame. It can't be any of those things. But he did talk about his challenges learning on Zoom. He talked about his immaturity about prioritizing sports, and that he was hopeful that a school could see his potential, and he was willing to prove his potential during that first semester. So if a school was willing to wait for his first semester grades, he would prove that he was able to handle college level coursework. Well, he immediately got accepted to like 3 schools, but we picked 3 schools where I felt, based on the total package, the fact he had numerous activities, he had some leadership roles, we made sure he had great recommendations, like that was a top priority. And we wrote, killer essays, worked through that process. And so we made sure that he applied to schools where he could get in, that he would like to go to, though. Not just to get in, but like that were actual viable options. And then we applied to a couple schools that might have been considered reaches. One said, we're going to wait till your first semester grades. We're like, hallelujah, that's better than a no. And he ended up getting in because his first semester grades got turned in at the very beginning of January. So, there's a lot of pieces in that puzzle, so to speak. So I would make sure that Andrew has classes where he can get A's. So if someone is going to postpone him to see his first semester grades before making a decision, that those grades show what he wants them to show. And then the other thing is, I would make sure he applies very early in the process. I would make sure he's got a great list of schools, that there are schools where he is likely to be accepted. And then making sure all the pieces are in place. And that's something, Diane, we can help him with, because I mean, that's what we do to make sure he's got a good mix of schools, that his application is rock star solid, even if the GPA isn't going to catch their attention right away. Okay. Diane, any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mary Ann. I apologize. My bad.
We're just looking at like some of the BS to MD programs.
Oh, okay, those are great programs.
And also, I know that we talked with you, had our little 15-minute phone call a couple weeks ago, and you had suggested focusing on testing, getting ready for PSAT, SATs. So I did find that there's a PSA 10. Our school doesn't offer testing, but there is a PSA 10. Do you get, I know it doesn't count for national merit, but does it, if you take it, then can you not take the PSA in the fall?
No, she's going to need to take the PSAT in the fall.
Can she take the PSAT in the spring as a practice and then take the PSAT in the
sure.
fall?
Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. And any test prep, like if we provide test prep, she's going to take actual PSAT test with us.
Okay.
But section by section, as we're going through it, and then prepping for that PSAT. And also, I mean, I highly recommend for everybody, taking the actual SAT or ACT at the end of sophomore year, so that her junior year has less pressure, because between the end of sophomore year and whenever she decides to take it during her junior year, as well as the one that the school will offer in the spring, but there's no like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't expecting this and I didn't score well. Instead, it's like, okay, I know what I'm looking at. Now I know how to prep so I can get the score I need, and I have plenty of time.
So if she takes the SAT at the end of her sophomore year,
That'll help for the PSAT?
so she's still eligible to take the PSAT?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then where can we find out the information of your test prep and the services that you offer?
Well,
Besides all these free ones that I jump in and join on when I can, but I'm like, I'm feeling guilty a little bit, but I also know that you had said in our call that there's a test preps, but I'm like, I can't find anywhere that.
At the end of February, we're actually offering it's February 26th and 7th, I think, is that Friday, or is that Saturday, Sunday? We're doing a 4-hour boot camp. It's 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. And it is designed to help with both ACT and SAT. It covers, and some of the differences are covered, but all of the similarities, obviously, we really dive deep in those 4 hours. We will be advertising that shortly, just not yet. So we'll be doing that. We also offer, obviously, one-on-one test prep. I like for students to take it first if they can, if there's time available, where they can take it, see how they do with the boot camp, with some prep, so they know what to expect. So they can start off at a higher score because they knew what to expect. And then, okay, now what do I really need to work on? And then do one-on-one to get there.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And then, Mary Ann, if you don't mind sharing your email, I will follow up with you with an email. If you want to, you can type it in the chat, and then that way I'll take it and use that. And then Andrew, since we started speaking at the beginning, and Diane, you should be super proud of him because he came on, he answered my questions. A lot of high school students act like, oh, I can't talk. So super impressed. But Andrew, any other questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Hearing all of this, it answered a lot of questions for me, and
Okay,
now I'm
good.
thinking more about it.
Good. Well, I'm glad it answered a lot of questions for you. And again, if you guys need any help, let me know. I would definitely get your Naviance password reset so that you can get in there. Take a look. Not every school offers the Scattergrams. It depends like what they paid Naviance for. But if you're able to get that, I think it's super helpful. and it'll shed some light on, some of the colleges you're looking at, and what is a reach, what is potential, what is a safety, and really help you see, how those are going to be different, and where maybe you'll want to add some additional choices, just to shore up one end or the other. More potentials, more reaches, more safeties, whatever that looks like for you.
We started out with virtually visiting, I think 15 colleges. We did that in September, October.
Okay.
It's a little different now. You don't go on site all the time, right? Everything is virtual.
Right. I know, it makes it hard.
It does, it makes it hard, but then is it realistic? Like we kind of looked at each other and said, I don't know about this one, so that's why we kind of narrowed down to what really gave us the warm and fuzzies. There's no other word for it.
Right, right.
Without even going on site. But he did go on one site, to a college already in November.
And did it confirm his feeling from the virtual admission?
You do that one virtually.
Oh,
yeah, he just went on site with that one.
okay.
So we don't know yet, we haven't really gone on site to others.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really suggest is the more you can get onto college campuses when there are kids there, even if the school's not offering actual tours, if you can do a drive-through and see, like, are kids walking around? Do they seem happy? Like, do they seem engaged? Is it during school? Like, there should be kids and you see no one, like they're all holed up in their rooms studying. Do they look miserable? There's a big difference when you go from campus to campus. So, kind of any visits you get an opportunity to do is great. Here's the other thing though. I'd apply to more schools and do visits next year during the year when kids are in, based on where I've been accepted. I have some students who have been accepted to a few colleges and they're like, I'm just not sure. And I'm like, great, go back and visit these 3. Go see them while class is in session. Go meet with the head of the department. Make sure, now you're narrowing it down. You have until May 1st to make a decision. So between applying early, getting decisions in November, December, January, February, March for the super selective schools, you still have time before May 1st to take a look at those schools.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, I hope this was helpful. Marianne, I'll shoot you an email. Diane and Andrew, if you need any help, let me know. Happy to help.